Chosen one. Listen closely. This moment is not just another passing second. Heaven has orchestrated your steps to bring you here. Not for entertainment, not for coincidence, but because something ancient in the spirit realm is stirring. There is something the enemy has known about you that you have not yet fully seen. Something powerful, something dangerous, something divine. You are a threat in disguise. The battles you faced weren't simply hardships, they were strategic assaults. From your earliest memories, the enemy has waged war against your identity. The confusion you felt as a child, intentional. The rejection you faced, engineered. The lies whispered into your soul, all part of a dark campaign to keep you blind to the truth. That you are a weapon in God's hands. You were never meant to blend in, never meant to live quietly, never meant to follow the crowd. You are a disruptor. You are a breaker of patterns, a carrier of glory, and hell saw it before you did. That's why you've been hit so hard, long before you could even spell the word purpose. The enemy already sensed the fire buried in your bones. He saw the blueprint before you took your first breath. He heard the conversations of heaven, the ones that spoke of your assignment. He watched angels mark your life with oil, and he moved quickly to try to silence you before your voice could awaken nations. But here's the truth. You survived, and that survival is your proof. You didn't crawl through the fire for nothing. You didn't bleed in secret, cry in silence, and keep moving forward just to exist. You made it because there's something inside you that cannot be killed, no matter how fierce the warfare. You were born to be a threat, not to people, but to darkness, to deception, to demonic patterns, to systems designed to keep generations in chains. You've been a marked one from the beginning, and it's time you realize it. As declared in the book of Isaiah, chapter 60, verse 1, Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. Let that sink in. You didn't stumble into this moment. You were set apart for it, handpicked, called out. Your life has always carried weight in the spiritual realm, and that's why the enemy has invested so much in trying to confuse you. His greatest fear is not just that you'll find peace, but that you'll find clarity, that you'll wake up one day and finally see what he's always known. You are a spiritual weapon. You see, chosen one. Hell doesn't fight what isn't dangerous. Hell isn't worried about the average, the passive, the indifferent. But you cause tremors just by existing. Your spirit irritates what's hidden. You carry a frequency that shakes false foundations. And even in your lowest moments, even when you thought you were nothing, the enemy still saw the oil dripping from your name. You are a divine assignment, not just a person, not just a believer. You are a move of God wrapped in flesh. That's why you've felt out of place. That's why people didn't understand you. That's why comfort was never your home, because you weren't built for the easy road. You were forged in fire, designed in glory, released into a world that needed what you carry. And what you carry is costly. The enemy has whispered that you're not enough, that you're too broken, that you're too late. But the only reason he's speaking at all is because he knows the truth is rising. He knows your eyes are opening. He knows you're remembering who you are. And when a chosen one wakes up, hell trembles. You may not see the full picture yet, but here's what's coming. Clarity, authority, movement. You're about to step into a season where you won't just survive the attacks, you'll reverse them. where you won't just discern the enemy, you'll disarm him, where your past pain becomes prophetic fire. This is the season where the threat awakens. So, if this word is piercing something deep inside you, if you feel the chills because it's not just a message, it's a mirror, then mark this moment in the comments. Type the number 999 as a prophetic declaration that your light has come, and say it with boldness. I rise now. My light has come. Type it now. 999. And if you know this word was for you, don't keep it to yourself. Like it. Share it. Subscribe so you never miss another word. Stay connected. Because this isn't just a message. This is your activation. You come from a bloodline that was never meant to be ordinary. The world may have told you otherwise. Your surroundings may have looked average. But the truth is, the fire in your bones didn't begin with you. It was passed down. The enemy knows it. He has studied it. He has watched your lineage for generations. Because something in your bloodline carries weight in the unseen realm. You were born into legacy, not luck. The enemy saw your bloodline long before you could even understand the concept of inheritance. He saw the dreamers, the warriors, the prophets, the intercessors, the voices that shook atmospheres in secret. He saw the ones who tried to rise but were cut down too early. He saw the ones who ran but couldn't outrun the generational battles. And he saw you, the one who was going to break what they couldn't. He knows you're the interruption to every pattern that tried to dominate your bloodline. The one who wouldn't bow, the one who wouldn't bend, the one with enough spiritual fire to confront what others tried to survive. That's why it's been this hard. You inherited not just battles, but victories that were never completed. You were born into spiritual tension, a war between what heaven has declared and what hell has tried to suppress. And the enemy knows that if you ever fully step into the awareness of your authority, everything shifts. Not just for you, but for your entire bloodline. You are the response to generations of prayer and pain. Somewhere in your line, someone cried out to God. Someone planted a seed of righteousness. And now, you are the harvest of what they sowed, anointed to finish what they started. The psalmist wrote in the book of Psalms, chapter 102, verse 28, "The children of your servants will dwell secure, their descendants will be established before you." That's not poetry. That's prophecy over your name. The enemy studies patterns. He knows how to track spiritual bloodlines. He's seen your name before, not just in the physical realm, but in the spirit. He's seen your grandmother's tears, your grandfather's secret battles. He's seen generations wrestle with addiction, poverty, mental torment, rejection, and he saw that the pattern would continue until it met you. You are the divine disruption. You were born with a war cry in your lungs, even if you haven't let it out yet. You were born with vision in your DNA, even if life has tried to cloud it. You were born with fire in your blood, even if you've been told to tone it down. And the enemy knows, if you ever remember who you are and where you come from, it's over for him. He attacked your family not just to destroy them, but to weaken you, to make you believe you came from brokenness, when in reality, you came from the remnant, the hidden ones, the praying ones, the resisting ones, the ones who didn't give up, even if they didn't get to see the promise fulfilled in their lifetime. And now, you carry the fulfillment. You were born with divine timing on your life. You're not late. You're not behind. You were sent to rise now. Because this is the moment heaven ordained for the curse to stop. The enemy didn't come after your bloodline just to torment it. He came after it because he saw the potential of what would be released through it. He saw you. That's why there's been so much pressure, so much resistance, so many attacks that don't make logical sense, because in the spiritual realm, bloodlines matter. And when a chosen one rises in the middle of a family that has battled with spiritual bondage, it sets off alarms in hell. Not fear of who you are today, but terror over who you're becoming. You are not weak. You are not unlucky. You are not random. You were born to be the curse breaker, the first to rise differently, the first to say no more, the first to walk in purity while others bowed to compromise, the first to step into purpose while others wandered in confusion, the first to carry spiritual authority that shifts the atmosphere of your home, your city, your region. You carry what your bloodline has been crying out for, and the enemy knows it. He saw it when you were a child. He heard it in the way you questioned what others ignored. He recognized it in your hunger for truth when others were satisfied with survival. He tried to beat it out of you. He tried to bury it under trauma, heartbreak, confusion, and pain. But it didn't die, because it wasn't just given to you. It was breathed into you by the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead. No, you didn't choose this war, but heaven chose you to end it. There's a reason the enemy has tried to silence you from the start. Your voice, though often doubted by you, holds supernatural weight. It's not about volume. It's about authority. When you speak, chains shift. Atmospheres respond. And the enemy has known this far longer than you have. Every time you were mocked for speaking up, every time someone told you you're too much, every time your words were ignored, twisted, or thrown back at you, that was warfare, not coincidence, not personality conflict. Warfare, because hell fears your voice being anointed and awake. You see, the enemy's goal was never just to mute you, it was to make you doubt your right to speak at all. That's why the spirit of silence followed you, even in places where you should have been safe. That's why your boldness was labeled rebellion. That's why your discernment was dismissed as being too deep or overthinking. He wanted you to associate your voice with rejection, because if he could convince you that silence was safer, he could stop the release of heaven through your mouth. But here's the truth. Your voice is not ordinary. It's a spiritual weapon. You don't just speak words, you release truth. You disrupt lies. You shift realms. And every time you open your mouth in alignment with God, you enforce the will of heaven in a world trying to forget it. Scripture says in Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21, "The tongue has the power of life and death, and the enemy has always known your tongue leans toward life." You are not too intense. You're wired for war. You are not too passionate. You're calibrated to confront lies. Your words carry precision, like arrows shot into spiritual targets. That's why you've been under pressure. That's why it's felt like your words always stir something, whether good or bad. But you were not created to entertain. You were created to interrupt. Even now, something is being stirred. Not just memory, but boldness. Your spirit remembers what your wounds tried to bury. That there is power in your testimony, power in the authority that flows. When you speak not from pain, but from presence. When you stopped speaking up, hell celebrated. When you swallowed your truth, the enemy clapped. Because silence gives darkness room to spread. But your voice, it exposes it. It brings light into hidden places. That's why you've never fit into cliques or shallow circles. Your words are too costly to be casual. You carry revelation, not opinions, not gossip, revelation. And when revelation is released, things break. Your voice doesn't need a microphone. All it needs is obedience. Heaven backs every syllable rooted in truth. Whether you're speaking into a mic or whispering in prayer, your voice carries consequence in the realm of the Spirit. You've been carrying prophetic weight without realizing it. Even in childhood, people responded to your words with either deep connection or deep resistance. There's rarely neutrality when a chosen one speaks, because light doesn't allow comfort in the presence of darkness. But now, God is calling you to step out of silence and into sound, to stop treating your voice like a threat and start using it as a weapon. Your story, your truth, your convictions, they were never meant to sit in silence. They are bridges for others. They are freedom codes for people bound in places you once escaped from. Some of the greatest breakthroughs you'll ever witness won't happen when you pray quietly in your heart. They will break open the moment you speak boldly in faith. That's why it's crucial that you don't water it down anymore. Don't apologize. Don't delay when you feel the push to speak. Heaven has assigned your voice to moments that look ordinary but carry eternal consequence. There are some doors that won't open until you speak. Some chains won't fall until you declare. Some atmospheres won't shift until your voice breaks the silence. Stop measuring your words by people's reactions. Start measuring them by heaven's backing. This is not the time to shrink. So if you feel the stirring in your spirit, if you know the enemy has tried to bury your voice long enough, declare it in the comments with just 4 powerful words. I take my voice. Type it boldly. Not for the algorithm, not for the likes, but because this act is warfare. It is a prophetic act of reversal. It is you stepping back into agreement with heaven. When you type those words, you're doing more than commenting. You're activating something dormant. You're declaring to the spirit realm, I'm no longer silenced. You're telling hell, you cannot gag me anymore. And you're telling yourself, my voice still matters, and I will use it for God's glory. I take my voice is not just a phrase, it's a breaking of silence. It's a reclaiming of territory. It's a spiritual shout from a soul that has been quiet for too long. Because the moment your voice aligns with truth, the enemy has no defense. The enemy doesn't just fear your voice, he fears your movement. Because movement signals momentum, and momentum breaks stagnation. From the moment you began to walk in the direction of purpose, even with trembling steps, all of hell took notice. Why? Because your very existence threatens the territory he's claimed for too long. Hell has been watching you, not casually, but strategically. There's been surveillance over your life since you were young, not because of who you were at that time, but because of who you were becoming. You don't realize it yet, but your life carries weight in the spiritual realm that extends far beyond your own timeline. You are not just living for yourself, you are carrying keys to places, people, and regions you haven't even stepped into yet. This is why the enemy's attacks have often been oddly specific. You thought it was coincidence that certain relationships collapsed the moment you tried to get serious with God. You thought it was just bad luck that every time you tried to step into your calling, something came to sabotage it. That wasn't life. That was surveillance and disruption. It was darkness trying to intercept a divine assignment. You see, the enemy doesn't just attack based on your present, he reacts to the potential written over your future. In the spirit realm, movement is prophetic. Every small decision you make to obey, every prayer you whisper when no one is watching, every time you forgive, every time you choose to rise again, that is movement. And every time you move in the Spirit, you advance the kingdom of God and threaten the kingdom of darkness. You may not see it, but you're carrying spiritual authority like a hidden sword. And the enemy knows exactly where you're assigned to strike. He knows that your presence carries breakthrough. He knows there are cities, families, and strongholds tied to your obedience. He knows that when you arrive in the right place, aligned with the right people, at the right time, something will break that cannot be undone. That's why he's been fighting to keep you distracted, delayed, and doubtful. But let this truth settle in your bones. Your steps are not random. They are watched and resisted because they are powerful. You don't just walk, you advance. You don't just move, you shift. Wherever you go, light goes. Wherever you step, the enemy loses ground. That's why your process has felt like resistance after resistance, because your presence is invasion. The enemy has tried to make you believe your life is going in circles, that you're stuck, that you're making no progress. But in truth, you've been marching around Jericho, not wandering in the wilderness. The walls are shaking, even when you don't hear the cracks yet. There are places in your life where you thought nothing was changing, but in the spirit, the enemy is already trembling. Because you didn't quit, you didn't stop, you kept showing up, praying, moving, forgiving, repenting, speaking, worshiping. Even when you didn't feel seen, you were shaking foundations that had stood for generations. Heaven keeps record of obedience that looks small to man, but causes earthquakes in the spirit. As revealed in the book of Joshua, chapter 1, verse 3, every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, I have given to you. This is not symbolic. This is reality. You are carrying authority to take ground, not just physically, but spiritually, in your family, in your bloodline, in your generation. Every time you move in faith, you are reclaiming territory that was lost, stolen, or forfeited. You are restoring what others gave up on. That's why the attacks have felt like pushback. But don't confuse resistance with misdirection. Sometimes, the greatest resistance confirms you're walking exactly where you're supposed to be. There are people who were assigned to be freed the moment your feet stepped into their atmosphere. There are generational chains that will snap the moment you show up in purpose. There are regions under oppression that will shake loose the moment you speak where God sends you. You are not just a person. You are a carrier of glory in motion. The enemy has followed you not because of where you've been, but because of where you're going. And if he can't stop you from moving, he will try to get you to doubt the power of your movement. Don't let him. Even the quiet steps matter. The hidden obedience matters. What looks like delay is actually strategy. You've been positioned like a seed under soil, hidden, but preparing to break through. And when you do, the ground itself will never be the same. The delays in your life were not accidental. They were orchestrated, crafted carefully, not by God but by an enemy who hoped that if he couldn't stop your calling, he could at least stall it. Because here's the truth, Most people never realize the enemy fears your timing as much as he fears your identity. He knows that destiny has a window, that there are moments in your life when heaven is open, alignment is close, and breakthrough is near. So what does he do? He distracts, he detours, he dangles counterfeit opportunities in front of you, just long enough to make you forget the original assignment. Delays are one of his oldest weapons. Not the kind of delay that builds patience or character, but the kind that leaves you tired, confused, and doubting if you ever heard God in the first place. The kind that causes apathy, that slowly convinces you that what God said was maybe just emotion, that maybe you missed it, that maybe it's not for you after all. But don't be deceived. Some of the places where you felt most stuck were actually spiritual ambushes. There were doors that were meant to open, but they didn't. Why? Because hell moved early, because distractions were planted, because weariness set in, because the right people turned away, and you began to settle. Not because you weren't called, but because the delay made you question if you were still chosen. The delay was never just about slowing you down, it was about disconnecting you from divine momentum. Because when a chosen one gets discouraged, everything they were meant to carry goes into pause mode. People assigned to them remain in bondage. Atmospheres they were called to shift remain heavy. Seeds they were called to plant remain in their hand. And the enemy knows if he can keep you in limbo long enough, purpose begins to die quietly. But not anymore, because now you can see it. You can see the detour. You can recognize the delay for what it was, a spiritual trap, a calculated pause designed to wear out your hope. And the moment you recognize it, the grip begins to break. Scripture tells us in the book of Daniel, chapter 10, verse 13, "The prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Sometimes the delay wasn't your fault. It was warfare in the unseen realm. So what do you do when you realize your delay was not divine? But demonic? You shift. You move again. You return to obedience. You don't waste another day wondering what could have been. You rise and pick up the assignment like it never left you, because it hasn't. Purpose doesn't expire. Calling doesn't evaporate. It waits. It waits for you to return, to remember, to realign. You are not behind. You are awakening. And if this message is confronting something real in your spirit, pause right now and don't scroll past it. Take a breath and let this moment reset you. Because this isn't just inspiration, this is intervention. Heaven is nudging you back into motion. You've sat in delay long enough. Sometimes all it takes is one word, one revelation, one realignment to break years of spiritual stagnation. And if this message is speaking directly to the place where you felt stuck, then let it be the moment you shift gears. Let it be the moment you stop settling and start rising again. You may have lost time, but you haven't lost destiny. And God is not asking for perfection, He's asking for response. All He needs is your yes. Not the polished version, not the fully planned version, just the surrendered version, the one that says, I may be late, but I'm still willing. No, because God restores time to those who return with hunger. Now hear this, what you almost gave up on, heaven still remembers. The calling you buried beneath responsibilities, disappointments, distractions. God has not let it die. It's waiting, and it's about to breathe again. But don't keep this word to yourself. If something in your heart is burning right now, If this message has made you stop and think, "This is for me," then share it. Someone else is in delay right now too. Someone else is silently discouraged. Someone else needs to know they're not disqualified, just distracted. So go ahead, share, subscribe, and invite others to receive the same clarity you're receiving right now. It's not about boosting numbers. It's about expanding the reach of what the Spirit is doing in real time. And if this word has truly blessed you, consider supporting this work so it can keep reaching those who are spiritually starving. Your seed, your gift, your generosity, it fuels more moments like this. More revelation, more voices being awakened, and more chosen ones being pulled out of delay. Let's keep this movement flowing. Let's keep truth going where lies have reigned too long, because the delay is breaking and the enemy's grip is slipping, and it's your time to rise. There's something about your presence that causes agitation in the spirit realm. Have you ever walked into a room and felt tension you didn't create? Have you noticed people shift, avoid, or react to you in ways that didn't match your intentions? That's not your imagination. That's your light, doing what it was born to do, disrupt darkness. The truth is, you carry disruptive light. You've been wondering why certain people distance themselves, why invitations stopped, why you always feel othered or out of place. And for too long, you internalized it. You thought, maybe I'm too much. Maybe I need to tone it down. But what you were actually feeling was the reaction of unhealed environments to your unveiled spirit. Your spirit exposes what others are trying to hide. Without saying a word, you reveal what's fake. Without preaching a sermon, your presence convicts. Without trying to impress, you carry authenticity. And the enemy has done everything he can to make you dim that light. Not by switching it off, he knows he can't, but by convincing you to cover it, to shield it, to silence it, to suppress it in the name of keeping peace. But you were never called to blend in. You were called to burn. And fire doesn't apologize for being fire. It is written in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 14, "You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden." And you are that city, built different, built for visibility, built to stand out in a world that celebrates shadows. And every time you try to make yourself smaller, to make others comfortable, your spirit grieves. Because heaven didn't anoint you to be liked, you were anointed to be effective. That's why your journey has felt lonely at times. You're not hard to love. You're hard to manipulate. And those who walk in deception can't sit comfortably with those who walk in discernment. It's not personal. It's spiritual. And the enemy knows it. That's why he's tried to shape your personality around acceptance instead of assignment. He's tried to get you to believe that your job is to keep peace, even if it means sacrificing your fire. But here's the truth. The light in you was meant to expose what's hiding in others. And when you show up authentically, everything counterfeit starts to panic. The enemy isn't just afraid of your anointing, he's afraid of your clarity, because a clear, confident, surrendered, chosen one is a walking disruption, a torchbearer, a gate opener, a spiritual wrecking ball. You don't even have to try. You just be, and darkness can't stand it. So instead of confronting you head on, the enemy sends whispers. You're too sensitive. You're too intense. You're too spiritual. You're not relatable. None. But in reality, You're just too real for environments built on performance. Let this liberate you. The isolation wasn't rejection, it was preservation. God has been protecting your oil from contamination. You were never meant to carry shared identity. You were meant to carry sacred fire. And sacred fire cannot be handled by just anyone. Your hunger, your conviction, your ability to see past masks. It's not accidental. It's assignment. You are an atmosphere shifter. Some of the tension you felt wasn't because of conflict. It was because your spirit was speaking when your mouth was silent. And people who live in darkness often get uncomfortable around light. Not because you're judgmental, but because they're convicted by your purity. So the enemy sent the suggestion, maybe if I just quiet down, maybe if I just avoid deep conversations, maybe if I stop praying out loud, all in an effort to make you invisible. But light cannot be hidden unless it agrees to dim itself. And this is your moment to make a holy decision. I will no longer shrink to fit the silence. I will no longer pretend I don't see what I see. I will no longer apologize for carrying light that exposes the dark, because your obedience is a warning shot in hell. You're not meant to be liked by everyone. You're meant to be recognized by heaven and feared by hell. If this word resonates, if your spirit is shouting while your heart is finally exhaling, then mark this moment. Comment the number 411 as a prophetic declaration. Why 411? Because in the natural, 411 is the number you call for information. But in the spirit, this is your revelation, your moment of clarity, your divine reminder. I carry light. I disrupt darkness. I will not dim. So type it. 411. Say to the spirit realm, I see now. I remember now. I refuse to hide what heaven has ignited in me. Because from this moment on, you don't walk in silently. You walk in carrying fire. You were never simply born. You were authored, formed in the mind of God, not as an afterthought, but as a blueprint. Your life is not a reaction to the world's chaos. Your birth wasn't just the result of human decisions. It was a strategic release into enemy territory. Because you weren't sent to adapt to the world, you were sent to disrupt it. There is a heavenly design upon your life. A pattern, a pulse, a reason. That's why the enemy hasn't been fighting you at the level of your behavior. He's been fighting you at the level of your identity. He doesn't care as much about what you're doing day to day. He's after who you'll remember you are. Because once you start moving in alignment with the blueprint God placed inside of you, every false structure around you begins to fall. You are a living prophecy. You are walking evidence of God's intention. Not everyone will understand that. People have tried to define you through their lens of limitation. They've tried to box you into categories they're comfortable with, to label you based on your past, your mistakes, or your quiet seasons. But none of them were present when God spoke your identity into existence. You weren't born to fit molds. You were born to break them. And that's why you've never felt at home in shallow places. Why small talk drains you. Why surface-level connection feels like starvation. Because you were wired for depth, for truth, for purpose. And superficiality suffocates you. You carry a frequency that only heaven can explain. That's why people have misunderstood your silence. That's why some called you distant, intense, or too much. What they don't know is that silence was spiritual processing. That intensity was intercession. That too much was actually accurate measure for the magnitude of your calling. There's nothing accidental about how you've been shaped. You feel different because you are different. God did not call you to copy. He called you to create, to manifest something never seen before, to reveal a part of himself that the world has yet to encounter, and he formed you as the vessel through which that revelation would flow. You are not a copy of someone else's anointing. You are a custom assignment, a divine original. That's why comparisons kill your confidence. That's why mimicry never sits right in your spirit. Because your design isn't just unique, it's prophetic. You are the answer to a question the world hasn't known how to ask yet. You are the solution to a problem hell has been trying to maintain. You've spent too long underestimating yourself because you didn't recognize the language of heaven written into your soul. It doesn't sound like the world. It doesn't follow their rules. You were written in a higher dialect, one that only heaven and hell fully understand. That's why you felt tension in rooms that looked harmless. That's why you felt spiritual pushback even when people smiled in your face. Because in the spirit, you've already been identified. You've been marked. The enemy doesn't need you to fall into gross sin. He just needs you to forget who you are. Because the moment you drift into self-doubt and spiritual amnesia, the blueprint goes blurry. And when the blueprint goes blurry, boldness dies, vision fades, and obedience weakens. But now you're waking up, and you're beginning to remember, I was not made for average. I was not sent to survive. I was built for impact. Everything God put in you has purpose. Every personality trait, every strength, every weakness, every longing, all of it is part of the architecture. And the more you surrender to his original design, the more clearly you'll see the next steps. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to become what was already written. You were formed with intention, breathed into the earth with authority, sent on assignment before you were ever named by man. And no matter what the world has tried to call you, only heaven's blueprint is truth. As written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 46, verse 10, I make known the end from the beginning. From ancient times, what is still to come. God started with your end in mind. And everything you're walking through right now, even the tension, the pressure, the fire is part of the alignment process, part of the refining, part of the unlocking. Don't shrink to fit what's familiar. Don't bend to match what's popular. You weren't written for the masses, you were written for impact. And impact always requires alignment with original design. You are the prophecy in motion, a divine blueprint with a voice. And now, you begin to build what only you were made to release. There's something sacred about your isolation. Though it may have felt like abandonment, though it stung like rejection, it was actually a divine strategy to preserve what was holy inside of you. Because when God marks a person for something greater, he doesn't always surround them with applause. He often surrounds them with silence. You mistook the silence for punishment, but it was protection. You felt like the forgotten one, the overlooked one, the one nobody called, nobody invited, nobody chose. And for a season, that silence echoed louder than your prayers. You looked around and saw others being promoted, being chosen, being celebrated while you were hidden in the background, wrestling in private with questions that had no answers. But what you couldn't see in those moments was what God was doing beneath the surface. Isolation has always been part of the preparation of the chosen. Joseph was isolated in a pit and then a prison. David was anointed in front of his family, then sent back to the sheepfold. Moses was hidden in the desert for decades. Even Jesus, after his baptism, was led into the wilderness before he ever stepped into public ministry. You weren't being punished. You were being set apart. Because oil doesn't flow from the crowd. It flows in the crushing. And in your isolation, you were being crushed, but not destroyed. Pressed, but not abandoned. Stripped, but only of what couldn't go with you into the next season. The silence you felt wasn't God turning his face from you, it was God turning his hand toward you. In that private place, he was forming something deep. Character, discernment, sensitivity to his voice, strength you didn't know you had, dependence you couldn't have developed surrounded by comfort and applause. And maybe most importantly, he was breaking your addiction to validation, because you can't carry glory and crave approval at the same time. God allowed the rejection so you would learn to hear his voice above every other. He let the phone stop ringing so you'd pick up your Bible instead. He let the invitations dry up so he could invite you into a room where only he speaks. Because he knew, if you ever truly listened, you'd never be the same again. It wasn't rejection, it was consecration, a holy setting apart, a removal from the noise, the distraction, the flattery, and the false connections, because what he was placing inside of you couldn't be exposed too early. It couldn't be handled by just anyone. He wasn't hiding you to delay you. He was hiding you to protect what was still growing. Some gift don't survive premature exposure. And you, chosen one, are one of those gifts. What felt like a lonely wilderness season was really an incubator, a place where heaven whispered to you truths the world wouldn't understand, a place where your tears became your prayers, where silence became sacred, where you learned that the absence of people doesn't mean the absence of purpose. It was in that place that you found God as your portion, not when everything made sense, not when your emotions felt strong, but when all you had left was trust. That's where the fire was formed. Not in public, in private. We read in Hosea, chapter 2, verse 14, "Therefore I am now going to allure her. I will lead her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her." And that wilderness wasn't empty, it was filled with divine whispers, words that marked you, encounters that others don't understand because they weren't there. People may see your strength now, but they don't know the price of your process. The anointing you carry wasn't built in comfort. It was built in that cave, that closet, that place of hidden pain and holy hunger. And though the season of isolation hurt, it purified you. It taught you how to walk without applause, how to stand when no one sees, how to pray when no one responds, how to believe when you're still bleeding, and how to stay faithful when nothing around you confirms the promise. That's why the enemy fought so hard in your loneliness. He knew what was being built. He knew that once you embraced the hidden place, you'd emerge with something unshakable. And now you're here not because of the crowd, but because of the crushing. So don't resent the isolation. Honor it. Remember it. Because the version of you that came out of it is not the same as the one who went in. You didn't just survive the silence. You were transformed in it. There's a reason your voice has felt heavy in certain moments. Why? You've opened your mouth and felt the atmosphere shift. Why your words, even in weakness, carried weight. It's because your voice was never meant to entertain. It was always meant to set things free. You've been carrying a spiritual weapon inside of you without even realizing it. The enemy has known this since the beginning. That's why the first thing he targeted wasn't your talent, your relationships, or even your body. It was your voice. Because, in the spirit realm, your voice is not just communication, it is activation. It unlocks. It dismantles. It tears down lies and builds up truth. You don't speak like everyone else, because what you carry isn't like everyone else. That's why there's always been resistance around your expression, why you've second-guessed yourself, why you've felt misunderstood when you tried to speak. Because the enemy wants your voice to sound like just another opinion, when in reality it was created to be a spiritual trumpet. When you speak under the weight of obedience, chains don't stand a chance. There are prayers you've whispered that sent angels on assignment. There are declarations you've made that pushed back darkness. There are words you've spoken over others that still echo in their lives today. Even when you didn't feel anointed, heaven heard you, and hell did too. The prophet Jeremiah records in chapter 1, verse 9, "Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I have put my words in your mouth." Your mouth is not just yours, it's heaven's microphone. That's why the enemy tried to associate your voice with conflict. He wanted you to link your authority to trouble. He tried to convince you that silence was safer, that staying quiet kept the peace. But the truth is, your silence empowers the lie. Some things only break when you speak. Your voice is not loud by volume, it's loud in the spirit. It carries reverberation. What you release doesn't stay in the moment, it ripples through atmospheres. That's why you've felt resistance after being obedient. Because the realm of darkness reacts when a chosen one speaks in alignment with heaven. Every time you speak the truth, a lie loses its throne. You carry a breaker anointing in your mouth. You may not have known what to call it before, but that fire you feel when injustice shows up, that stirring when deception is in the room, that urgency in your spirit when someone is suffering silently, it's not emotion, it's activation. You were created to call things out of bondage and into alignment. You've been too quiet for too long, not because you're timid, but because you've been lied to, told that your voice is too much, too disruptive, too intense. But what they called too much, God calls necessary. And what they called intense, God calls impactful. Your voice doesn't need permission. It needs obedience. There are territories that won't shift until you speak. Families that won't heal until you declare. Patterns that won't break until your sound pierces the atmosphere. You were never meant to speak just for yourself. You were born to echo heaven. You are not just a speaker. You are a sounding alarm. That's why some environments felt hostile toward you. It wasn't personal, it was spiritual. Your voice confronts spirits that others have become comfortable with. Your sound reminds people of convictions they've buried. You bring things into the light just by being obedient. And now, it's time to reclaim what was silenced. You won't always have the perfect words, but you will have the right ones. Words backed by the Spirit. Words wrapped in truth. Words that break shame and awaken boldness. Because the world doesn't need more noise, it needs your sound. So let the enemy know, my voice is rising again. Let this moment be your agreement with heaven. Let it be your declaration that you remember who you are. If this word hit your spirit, if you know your voice has been sleeping, but the fire is returning, then drop this in the comments as a prophetic act. I release sound. End R. Just 3 words, but in the spirit realm. It's a strike. Because when a chosen one makes that declaration, heaven leans in, and hell backs up. Type it now, I release sound, and let your silence end where this sentence begins. This battle you're in is not random, it's territorial. You were sent to shift regions, not just routines. Your life is not just about surviving storms, it's about displacing strongholds. The enemy hasn't been fighting you over personal comfort. He's been fighting you over spiritual territory. You were sent to take ground. This is why the warfare has intensified in places you were just beginning to feel planted. It's why doors opened and then slammed. Why opportunities came and then vanished. Why certain regions, cities, jobs, or family dynamics felt more like battlegrounds than blessings. Because wherever you go, assignments awaken and darkness reacts. You are not just a person, you are a walking invasion. The enemy doesn't care about your convenience. He fears your placement. He knows that every time a chosen one stands in alignment, something spiritual breaks loose. When you walk into a space carrying obedience, purity, and prophetic clarity, you don't just show up, you take back what belongs to God. And that's what you've been doing without even realizing it. You've been wondering why some places feel so heavy, why some atmospheres shift when you enter, why things seem to break down or expose themselves when you're around. It's not you being unlucky. It's not your imagination. It's spiritual exposure. Your presence shines light in places used to hiding. There are ancient assignments tied to your life that stretch back generations, territories that have been dominated by strongholds, fear, confusion, addiction, religion, pride, trauma. And the moment your feet step in, heaven sends a signal. The occupier is here. It is written in Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 24. Every place where you set your foot will be yours. The Lord your God will give it to you, as he promised. That's not just metaphor. That's a mandate. God is reclaiming regions through you. He didn't just call you to live well. He called you to displace darkness, to take back schools, homes, cities, online spaces, generational bloodlines, cultural systems. You're not just here to exist. You're here to enforce the reign of the kingdom. That's why the resistance isn't always personal, it's positional. The enemy fights hardest where the ground is most valuable. He knows what's at stake. He knows your prayers carry weight. Your presence causes disruption. Your worship opens gates. Your declarations shift atmospheres. Your obedience, even in hidden moments, sends shockwaves. You are a walking shift. So don't let the pressure fool you. The tighter it feels, the more proof that you're on the front lines of something that matters. You've been trying to fight battles as if they're about you, when really, they're about what's connected to you. The ground you've been assigned to reclaim, the people connected to your obedience, the systems you've been sent to confront. And yes, it's costly, but you weren't sent without covering. You are backed by heaven. When you feel like giving up, remember what you're standing on and what you're standing for. God didn't just place you where you are for provision. He placed you there for penetration. You are God's weapon of infiltration, and the ground you're standing on right now could be the reason your entire bloodline is about to be freed. If this word is hitting your spirit, if you're starting to realize that what you thought was just a difficult season is actually a spiritual assignment, then don't keep this to yourself. Like this message, because others need to feel what you're feeling right now. Share it. because you might be the reason someone else realizes they are standing on holy ground. Subscribe, because we are building a prophetic army, one message at a time. And this is not the moment to be spiritually disconnected. And if this word has ignited something in you, if it has exposed how powerful your presence truly is in the Spirit, consider sowing into this movement, not out of pressure, but from revelation. What you help fuel in the Spirit, you participate in. When you give, you're not just helping a message go out, you're sending a key into someone else's prison. Your giving doesn't just support content, it activates conquest. We're taking ground through truth, through obedience, through radical faith, and you are part of it. Let's keep this movement flowing. Let's keep reaching souls who've been standing in the middle of warfare, not knowing they were already winning. Because here's what the enemy didn't expect. You're not backing down. You're planting your feet. You're claiming territory. You're waking up to the reason you were sent. You're declaring, this ground belongs to God. You were never just meant to survive. You were meant to occupy. The kingdom suffers violence, and the violent take it by force, not with noise, but with conviction, not with shouting, but with presence. So when you feel the warfare rising, remember, it's not just resistance, it's recognition. Hell knows you've arrived, and heaven knows it too. You think it's just intuition, but it's far more than that. What you've called a feeling, what others dismissed as being oversensitive, is actually a high-level spiritual gift. You've been walking in discernment sharp, heaven-encoded discernment, and the enemy has been hoping you would never find out. Because once you recognize what you carry, you'll stop ignoring what you see. There's a reason why certain people made you uneasy, even when they hadn't done anything wrong. There's a reason why you sensed something was off in an environment everyone else was praising. Why you couldn't celebrate what others called success. It's because your spirit was detecting what your mind couldn't yet explain. Discernment isn't just about knowing right from wrong, it's about knowing what is true in a realm where lies wear masks. And the enemy has always hated your ability to see through the surface. You've been walking into rooms and disturbing spirits you didn't even know were hiding. You've walked past people and felt resistance without knowing why. You've said yes to something that felt right, only to feel the weight of a holy warning in your gut, and later found out why. That wasn't paranoia. That was the Holy Spirit, training your senses. But here's the part the enemy fears most. Your discernment isn't just protective, it's prophetic. You're not just called to avoid danger, you're called to declare destiny. You've been given insight not only to know what to walk away from, but what to speak life into. God didn't just gift you with the ability to sense darkness, He gave you the capacity to recognize hidden glory, to detect anointing, to confirm alignment, to unlock potential. That's why confusion has been one of the enemy's favorite tools against you, because if he couldn't steal your gift, he'd try to distort your interpretation of it. That's why there's been a battle in your mind, a war over whether what you see is real, whether what you feel is truth or fear. He's tried to convince you to silence your discernment, to second-guess your instincts, to explain away what you've spiritually perceived, but you've seen too much to go back. Even if you don't always have the words, your spirit knows. Even when your emotions want to stay, your spirit starts shaking. Even when everyone else is clapping, your soul says, "Be careful." It's not pride. It's not suspicion. It's the Spirit of truth working in you. As spoken in the Gospel of John, chapter 16, verse 13. But when He, the Spirit of truth, comes, He will guide you into all truth. That's what's been happening your whole life. The Spirit has been guiding you quietly, consistently, faithfully into truth. Even when you didn't recognize Him, even when you thought it was just gut instinct, even when you obeyed reluctantly, even when you ignored Him and later wished you hadn't, He was there, teaching, sharpening, showing, and the more you submit to that voice, the sharper your discernment becomes. This is why certain people pulled away from you, not because you were wrong, but because you saw too clearly. This is why some conversations shifted awkwardly when you walked into the room. This is why you felt like you didn't belong in places that seemed harmless, because the light in your eyes made deception uncomfortable. And the enemy knows, when you fully embrace this gift, you become unshakable. You stop being easily manipulated. You stop falling for emotional traps. You stop tying yourself to people who look godly but carry a hidden agenda. You stop investing in assignments that were never yours. And you start moving with precision. This is the season where God is calling you to trust your discernment again, not with arrogance, but with awareness. To stop brushing off that inner check, to stop forcing yourself to be comfortable in places that drain you spiritually, to stop apologizing for your ability to see what others ignore. Your discernment is not a burden, it's a weapon, a gift that's been forged in silence, tears, disappointment, and yes, even loneliness. But now, it's matured. You've seen enough, walked through enough, heard enough, and now it's time to move like someone who knows the truth before the facts ever arrive. Because when the Spirit of truth guides you, lies have no place to hide. You're not crazy. You're not dramatic. You're not imagining things. You are discerning. You are chosen. And what you carry cannot be faked, copied, or turned off. So let the enemy be nervous, because the days of you second-guessing what God shows you are over. You've been under pressure because heaven is preparing you for something few are willing to carry. While others have settled for survival, you've been trained often in silence for spiritual rulership. Not just influence, not just visibility, rulership, authority, dominion. What you've endured wasn't just pain, it was preparation. Every betrayal, every delay, every time you had to rise again when no one was watching, it was all part of something greater. God wasn't just building your character, He was refining your crown. Not a crown of gold, but of glory, a mantle forged in tears, truth, and trials. The enemy didn't just want to steal your joy, he wanted to convince you you'd never be ready, that you're too flawed, that you're too late. But what he couldn't cancel was the fact that you are royal blood under pressure. And pressure doesn't destroy the called, it reveals them. You've been walking through a season where God has been stripping everything that can't go with you, not to punish you, but to prepare the throne. You were never meant to follow crowds. You were born to carry keys. That's why you felt like you don't fit anywhere. You've tried to shrink, to adapt, to belong, but nothing satisfied. Because what's inside you was never meant to be contained by comfort zones. You are being trained to rule in a spiritual dimension where only the surrendered and refined can lead. Rulership in the kingdom of God doesn't come through striving, it comes through crushing, through obedience when it doesn't make sense, through faithfulness when nothing is changing, through purity when compromise would be easier. You've been living through a process that doesn't make sense in the natural because your throne isn't natural. You're not being elevated for popularity. You're being positioned for power. You're being trusted with the weight of heaven's assignment. And before God gives you authority out there, He builds integrity in here in the heart, in the hidden place, in the places where no applause can reach you. This is the season where you've had to face your own reflection. God has been refining your motives, crushing pride, purging offense, testing your posture. Because where you're going, the weight will crush anything false, and you will carry glory, not just gifting. You're being trained to be someone hell fears and heaven trusts. It's not about titles or platforms. It's about impact, legacy, kingdom movement. And yes, it's heavy, but so are crowns. So is purpose. So is destiny. As written in the second letter to Timothy, chapter 2, verse 12, if we endure, we will also reign with Him. This is your endurance season, but it's also your proving ground. God is not preparing you for a moment. He's preparing you for responsibility. You won't just walk into rooms, you'll shift them. You won't just survive spiritual warfare, you'll command victory. You won't just speak truth, you'll embody it. That's why the attacks have been personal. Because what's being built in you is not public, it's eternal. And the enemy knows that when a chosen one steps into their rulership, entire bloodlines change. Entière régions shift. Demonic systems lose their grip. So yes, it's been hard. Yes, it's been lonely. But the weight you feel is proof that the crown is real. And what felt like God breaking you down was really God building you up on a foundation that hell cannot shake. This is not your breaking. This is your becoming. And if this word is confirmation for what you've been walking through, if your spirit is weeping but your heart is rising, then mark it now with a number that declares you are stepping into spiritual rulership. Comment the number 4,444 below. This is not superstition, it's spiritual agreement. A prophetic number for the fourth watch of the night. The hour when heaven moves while others sleep. The hour of divine alignment and preparation. The hour where God raises rulers from the fire. So type it now. 4,444. Declare to the spirit realm. I have endured. I am becoming. I will reign. Because the pressure didn't crush you. It crowned you. And the crown you carry is not made by human hands. It's forged in submission, sealed in fire, and worn with humility. This is not the end of your pain, but the beginning of your reign. The weight you've carried is proof of the mantle you're stepping into. You're not just wearing glory, you're walking in it. From this point forward, you don't beg for space, you occupy it. The throne is ready. Some fires were meant to destroy you, but they didn't. And not because they weren't real. The flames were fierce. The heat was unbearable. You lost things in those fires. People, places, plans. You came out with ash on your hands and smoke in your lungs. But you came out. Because what the enemy sent to consume you, God used to mark you. There's a difference between those who carry knowledge and those who carry fire. You don't just talk about warfare, you've lived through it. You don't just know scripture, you've clung to it in the dark. You don't just believe God is a deliverer, you've watched Him pull you from the wreckage. That's why you can't be easily shaken anymore. You've been marked by fire. You don't respond like everyone else does. You don't fold like you used to. You've been through things that could have made you bitter, cynical, numb, but instead, they made you dangerous. Not reckless, not arrogant, dangerous to darkness. Because now you carry something deeper than words. You carry evidence. And that kind of weight can't be learned. It must be survived. The enemy tried to burn away your identity, your purpose, your confidence. But instead, all he did was burn off what was never meant to stay. Pride, fear, codependency, insecurity. The fire purified what you didn't even know was polluting your spirit. And now, you're lighter, sharper, clearer. You used to cry out, "God, why me?" But now, with trembling strength, your spirit whispers, "God, thank you for keeping me through it." You've stopped asking for an easier path. You've started asking for stronger shoulders. Because when you've walked through fire and still carry peace, still carry purpose, still carry praise, you realize the fire didn't define you. It refined you. As spoken in the book of Zechariah, chapter 13, verse 9, "I will refine them like silver and test them like gold. They will call on my name, and I will answer them." Oh, that is what he's been doing all along, refining you not for survival, but for assignment. Fire burns surface-level things, but it also reveals what's eternal. You've discovered in the flames what comfort could never teach you, that God's presence is not proven in the absence of heat, but in the fact that he stood with you in the middle of it. You didn't just walk through the fire, you learned how to carry it. And that's what sets you apart now. You're not trying to impress anyone. You're not chasing applause. You've been to places in the spirit that others only sing about. You've had to worship with no music, declare truth with no audience, hold on to hope with no confirmation. And because of that, your voice carries weight. Your presence carries oil. Your prayers carry authority. Not because of who you are, but because of what you've endured with God. You don't even look like what you've been through. That's the glory. People see the strength, but not the scars. They feel the anointing, but not the agony. But heaven knows. Heaven saw every tear that hit your pillow. Heaven heard the groans that had no words. Heaven documented every moment you chose obedience when rebellion would have been easier. And now, hell knows it too. Because when a chosen one survives the fire, they don't come out weaker. They come out anointed. You're not walking forward as someone who's barely making it. You're stepping forward as someone who's marked by God. Scarred, but sanctified. The flame didn't fade you. It forged you into something the enemy cannot explain. Into someone trials cannot bend. Into someone who terrifies the kingdom of darkness without needing to say a word. You are fire-tested, and because of that, you carry a heat that exposes what's fake and ignites what's dormant. When you speak, things shift. When you pray, things move. When you show up, spirits recognize the weight you carry. That weight didn't come from a title. It came from the fire. The enemy regrets letting you survive it. Because now, every time you open your mouth, you remind hell of what it couldn't do. Every time you walk in obedience, you take back ground that the fire was supposed to destroy. Every time you refuse bitterness, you slap the enemy in the face with grace. This is your season to stop hiding the evidence of what you've walked through. The fire didn't ruin you, it revealed you. And you don't carry the smell of smoke, you carry the fragrance of oil. Let them look confused. Let them wonder how you still have peace, how you still believe, how you still carry power after everything you've lost. They didn't see the fire, but you did. And by the grace of God, you walked out of it, changed forever. You don't realize it. But your obedience is breaking things that have been rooted for generations. Every yes you've given to God, especially the quiet ones, the costly ones, the ones that didn't make sense, has carried a ripple effect far beyond what your eyes can see. You're not just walking in faith for yourself. You're walking for those who came before you and those who will come after. There are patterns in your bloodline that were so deep, so familiar, so culturally accepted. No one questioned them. Cycles of fear, cycles of addiction, cycles of passivity, broken relationships, rebellion, bitterness, poverty, silence, and for generations. No one had the clarity or the courage to confront them until you. You didn't choose this fight, but heaven chose you to end it. That's why your life has felt like one long confrontation. That's why everything you do feels heavier than it should. Why healing feels deeper. Why conviction hits stronger. Why nothing feels light anymore. It's because you've been chosen to be a turning point in your entire family line. What others ignored, you felt. What others tolerated, you resisted. What others justified, you exposed. What others ran from, you faced head-on. And it has cost you emotionally, spiritually, relationally. But the weight you've carried is not in vain. You've been standing in places your ancestors never stood, breaking cycles they never escaped, praying prayers they never prayed, saying no to things they called normal. That's not weakness. That's legacy in action. It's not just your story being rewritten, it's your bloodline being realigned. Every time you chose healing over hiding, every time you repented instead of repeating the same patterns, every time you honored God instead of reacting in the flesh, you struck a blow to generational bondage. And even when no one applauded you, heaven recorded it, as spoken in the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verse 6. But showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. Oh, you've been walking in that promise. And it's not just spiritual poetry, it's legal ground. Your obedience is building a new inheritance, not just financially, but spiritually. There will be children, both biological and spiritual, who will be born into peace because you fought the war. You are the transitional generation, the one that carries the pain of the past and the potential of the future at the same time. That's why you've felt stretched, because you've been standing between what was and what will be, pulling heaven into earth, refusing to pass down what tried to live through you. You've walked through fire and said, "This ends with me." 1/5. You've stood in places of confusion and declared, "Clarity begins here." 1/5. You've seen the pattern and refused to repeat it. And it's working, even if the results aren't obvious yet. Even if your family doesn't recognize it. Even if you're still in the middle of the breaking, you're already winning. Because the most dangerous thing to darkness is not a perfect person. It's a surrendered one. A person who refuses to let pain turn into poison. A person like you. You are not cursed. You are called. You are not carrying generational sin, you're carrying generational answers. You are the response to someone's desperation. the fulfillment of prayers whispered in bedrooms, journals, and altars by people who never saw what they longed for, but birthed it anyway, through their faith. You are the moment they believed for. So, yes, it's heavy. Yes, it's hard. But you were born for this. Born to be the first to feel what others buried. Born to break agreements with lies others lived under. Born to say, enough, and mean it. Every yes to God is saying no to something that held your family captive. And the enemy hates that you're still saying yes. He hates that you're still standing. He hates that, even bruised and limping, you're still moving forward, because he knows once a generational break arises, the chain reaction begins. And it's not just for your bloodline. Your faith will unlock freedom for others who've never had a blueprint for breakthrough. You're not just leading your family out, you're lighting the way for others to follow. You carry a sound that breaks silence, a stance that challenges patterns, a faith that disarms demons. You are the one, the first, the interruption, the deliverer, the rebuilder, and the enemy can't stop what God has begun through you. Because the shift didn't start around you, it started inside you first. The enemy senses it. Your crowning is close. And when heaven begins to move toward fulfillment, hell panics. You felt it, the sudden resistance, the strange fatigue, the out of nowhere attacks that don't make sense. These aren't just life happening, they are reactions. Spiritual reactions to your proximity to breakthrough, because your endurance is not empty. It's prophetic. You've survived what was meant to strip you. You've endured what should have broken your mind, your faith, your voice. But here you are scarred, maybe weary, yes, but still standing, still praising, still holding on when others walked away. And now, you're entering the moment all of hell hoped you wouldn't reach, the moment of divine crowning. This crown is not made of gold and glitter. It's made of surrender, obedience, scars, private worship, and costly choices. It's not for status. It's for weight, for rulership, for heaven-backed authority. You didn't earn it through perfection. You were forged for it through fire. That's why the opposition increased. Not because you did something wrong, but because you kept doing what was right. The enemy hoped the delay would discourage you, but instead, it strengthened your roots. He hoped betrayal would break you, but it purified your motives. He hoped loneliness would isolate you, but it only deepened your intimacy with God. Now your oil is full. Your gaze is steady. Your voice is weighty. And your time is drawing near. This next season is not about striving. It's about receiving what you were always meant to carry. The crown doesn't elevate your ego. It confirms your endurance. You were found faithful when no one was watching. You passed tests that others ran from. You said yes in the dark. And now heaven says, well done. As declared in Revelation chapter 3, verse 11. Hold on to what you have, so that no one will take your crown. That's you. You didn't survive for nothing. You didn't wait in vain. The season you're about to enter isn't just the result of endurance, it's the reward of obedience. And it's not just for your benefit. You're being crowned so that others can be covered. You're being lifted so others can rise. This is why you've felt the tension between humility and boldness, because God is trusting you with visible favor. But even as this moment draws near, you must not forget, The crown is holy. Not everyone will understand it. Some will question it. Some will try to copy it. But they didn't pay the price for it. They didn't walk through the midnight valleys. They didn't hold the broken pieces together with trembling hands and stubborn faith. They weren't there. But heaven was. And heaven remembers. You've been crowned in the Spirit long before it's seen in the natural. What's coming is not a shift in identity, it's a public confirmation of what God already whispered in private. You are stepping into visibility, not for fame, but for function. You carry a mantle that breaks chains and rebuilds ruins. And yes, it will come with responsibility, with more vision, with more warfare. But it will also come with backing. Heaven doesn't crown without covering. You will not walk alone. Angels will surround you. Wisdom will flow through you. Authority will follow you, not because of charisma, but because of consecration. So what do you do while you wait for the manifestation? You stay low. You stay faithful. You keep showing up. Keep praying. Keep loving. Keep obeying. The crown is not given to the perfect, it's given to the prepared. And preparation looks like posture. Right now, if this word has pierced something in your spirit, take a moment, breathe, reflect, and let this truth settle. Heaven is preparing to crown what hell tried to crucify. And if this message has met you right where you are, if you know deep down that something holy is resting over your life, then, like this message, let it be an altar, a moment, a marker. Share it with someone else who's standing in the middle of the war and needs to know the reward is still coming. Subscribe so you don't miss what God is building in this space. We're not growing a fan base. We're building an army of the crowned, and you belong here. And if this word has strengthened you, consider partnering with us. Your support doesn't just bless a message, it multiplies a mission. Every seed, every gift, every act of generosity fuels this fire forward. You are not just receiving, you are releasing breakthrough into someone else's battle. The crown isn't the end. It's the beginning of new responsibility, a new realm, a new roar. So if you feel the weight of glory drawing near, if your heart is trembling because you know this is your word, then mark this moment in the comments. Comment, I carry glory. Not because you're looking for a title, but because you've walked through fire and refused to quit. Because your yes carried weight. Because heaven has placed something holy on your life. Because you are not just arriving, you are ascending. There is a silence that only the called understand. Not the silence of neglect, but the silence of divine strategy. You felt it when heaven seemed quiet, when instructions stopped flowing, when the familiar rhythms of revelation grew still. But that silence wasn't absence. It was activation. God was not ignoring you. He was trusting you. Sometimes the teacher is silent during the test, not because you're abandoned, but because you're being proven. Not in the sense of performance, but in the deep spaces of your identity. Who are you when the voice quiets, when the signs pause, when the wind stops blowing? Are you still willing to walk forward when the direction doesn't change? The silence wasn't punishment. It was placement. Because silence doesn't mean you're off course. It often means you're right on schedule. Heaven's silence is a holy invitation to trust what He already said. The last word He gave you still stands. You don't need a new word. You need endurance for the one that's already alive inside you. It was never about constant confirmation. It was always about deep-rooted faith. That's what's maturing in you now. The more mature the assignment, the less noise surrounds it. When God begins to trust you with weightier mantles, He trains you to be unmoved by external chaos and unseduced by emotional reassurance. You start learning how to follow His presence, not just His volume. And that kind of following requires stillness in your soul. The wilderness seasons that taught you this were not wasted. The nights where you laid in bed wondering if you missed something. The days you kept showing up, even when there was no fresh word. The moments you obeyed without clarity, those weren't moments of failure. They were moments of fortification. As written in Lamentations chapter 3, verse 26, "It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord." Your power isn't in how loud you can pray, how many signs you can interpret, or how quickly doors open. Your true strength is in how still you can remain while carrying fire inside your bones. You've been trained for stability in the silence, for faith that doesn't flinch, for purpose that isn't performance-based. And that's dangerous, because people who learn how to walk with God in the quiet become unshakable when the noise returns. People who survive silence become lethal in seasons of manifestation. Why? Because they're no longer addicted to external applause or immediate clarity. They are anchored. And that's what you are now, anchored. You don't shake just because the wind rises. You don't doubt just because you can't see every step. You've been trained to trust the one who holds the path, not just the path itself. And that trust is rare. It's costly. It's refined in rooms of stillness, in moments when all you had was a whispered memory of what God promised you before the storm hit. But it was enough. And now, because you didn't rush ahead, because you didn't trade the silence for noise, you're becoming someone the Spirit can trust with weight. Not just words, not just dreams. Weight, responsibility, legacy, revelation that doesn't flatter, it forms. You're not here because you're popular in the Spirit. You're here because you're rooted. Rooted in silence. Rooted in submission. Rooted in that strange, holy stillness that tells the storm, "I will not move until God speaks again." That kind of posture terrifies the enemy, because most people react. Most people panic when God grows quiet. Most people shift when clarity fades. But not you. You've been taught to stand still and see. You've been trained to carry the word in your gut, not just your ears. So when the noise comes, and it will, when opportunities flood in and voices clamor for your attention, you'll know how to discern what's sent and what's just loud. That's the difference between the anointed and the distracted. One waits for God's timing. The other rushes into man's approval. You've waited. You've endured. You've passed the test of silence. And now, you walk with a stillness that speaks louder than noise. A presence that doesn't need to shout. A confidence that doesn't crave confirmation. A knowing. A peace. A rhythm aligned with heaven's pulse. You carry the sound of silence, the kind that breaks cycles. Not with noise, but with still authority. And because of that, you're ready for what comes next. Because those who are faithful in silence become dangerous in authority. And you, chosen one, are stepping into that danger, fully awake, fully armed, fully aligned. You've been awakened not to a trend, not to emotion, not to a passing moment of inspiration, but to truth. A truth so deep, so eternal, it can no longer be ignored. The veil has lifted. The lies you once tolerated now sting. The compromises you once justified now grieve you. Why? because your spirit has remembered who you are. You are not like the rest. You never were. There was always something different. You saw things others missed. You questioned what others blindly accepted. You felt the weight of decisions, the pull of convictions, the pressure to walk a path no one else around you understood. And now it makes sense. You've been chosen for such a time as this. This isn't about status or spotlight. It's about assignment, about walking in a realm where your every step is warfare and every word is weight. You're not just called to attend church, you're called to shake the church, to provoke sleeping spirits, to disrupt dead religion, to remind the earth that heaven is near and time is short. There's a reason why your process has been so intense, why the fire came and didn't relent, why the pruning was severe and the silence was long. Because God wasn't building a platform, He was forging a weapon. And that weapon is you, a surrendered life, a purified vessel, a heart that doesn't just carry knowledge, but divine authority. It is written in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verse 19, I have given you authority to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. And this isn't theory. This is reality. A mantle has been placed on your shoulders, one that heaven watches and hell fears. You may not feel worthy of it, and that's the point. Worthiness was never the qualification. Obedience was. And your obedience has positioned you for impact beyond what you can currently see. There's a shift taking place, not just around you, but within you. You're no longer reacting. You're responding. No longer begging. You're declaring. You're no longer wondering if you're chosen. You're moving like someone who knows you are. You're no longer waiting for open doors. You're becoming the key. That's the real threat to the enemy. Not just that you believe in God, but that you finally believe God is working through you. Because when a chosen one fully accepts that truth, they become unstoppable. Not because the battle disappears, but because their posture shifts. You don't fight for victory, you fight from victory. You don't pray from desperation, you pray from identity. You don't walk into rooms looking for acceptance, you walk in carrying kingdom. Everywhere you go, atmospheres adjust. Spirits take notice. People feel the weight, even if they can't explain it. You no longer have to shout to be heard. The authority you carry speaks before your mouth ever opens. And now comes the final turning point. This is the moment when you stop waiting for someone else to validate what God already confirmed. When you stop treating your calling like a possibility and begin to move like it's a certainty. When you stop asking for permission to be powerful and begin to live like someone already crowned in the Spirit. Because you are. What's ahead will not be easy. The darkness will resist. Distractions will arise. The familiar will call you back. But you must remember, you were never meant to blend in. You are not common. You are not casual. You are not one among many. You are marked. Your prayers carry shift. Your presence disturbs systems. Your obedience reroutes generations. You were born to stand at the edge of culture and cry out, repent. And you were born to walk into dead places and release resurrection. You were born to tear down what is false and reveal what is holy. This world doesn't need more nice Christians. It needs dangerous believers, those who walk in both compassion and confrontation, those who know how to wash feet and flip tables, those who carry both mercy and fire. That's you. You are not rising because it's your time. You are rising because it's God's time through you. Heaven has waited for this alignment. And now, the weight of what you carry must be released. No more shrinking. No more apologizing. No more explaining away your authority. The earth is groaning. Creation is waiting. The heavens are watching. And the crown you carry is not ornamental, it's operational. It's time to wear it. You are God's chosen one. Walk like it. You've made it to the end of this message, but in the Spirit. This is only the beginning. Something eternal has been unlocked inside you. Not just knowledge, but a knowing. Not just information, but activation. You don't walk away from this message the same, because now you know too much. Now you carry too much. Now you've seen what cannot be unseen. You are chosen. Chosen to shift atmospheres. Chosen to break cycles. Chosen to carry the weight of heaven in a world drowning in compromise. The world may never understand what you carry, but it will feel it. Hell may try to resist what you carry, but it will bow to it. And heaven will move through what you carry, because your yes has opened portals no man can shut. So, if this word has pierced your spirit, if it confirmed what God's already been whispering, take action now. Like this message, not for vanity, but as a prophetic seal. Comment below with what the Spirit is doing in you right now. Whether it's one word, one sentence, or just a fire emoji, testify. Let hell see you're not silent. Share it with someone who's been in the dark too long. Let them see the light you now carry. Subscribe to stay in alignment with what God is releasing through this space. The oil is only beginning to pour, and if you've been blessed by this message, consider sowing back into the mission. Your support doesn't just sustain the words, it multiplies the fire. You're not donating to content. You're investing in deliverance. You are God's chosen one. You are marked. You are ready. Let the world witness the rise of the crowned